and welcome to Scribes and Songsters. I'm Veronique Mandel. Our guest today is Kathryn MacDonald, who recently released her latest poetry collection, The Blue Gate. Kathryn is a writer who's led a very interesting life, including spending time in Kenya, and she's also, I hear, a sailor. So we'll talk about that too, which has been reflected in her works as an author and as a poet. Welcome to Scribes and Songsters.
Thank you, Veronique.
After reading your books, I'm so delighted that I get to interview you. And so the one thing I wondered was, how old were you when you wrote your first poem? Do you remember?
I don't remember, but I was probably 10 or 11 when I started writing stories. And I was pretty serious. I was a slow reader. I didn't learn to read till I was quite late. Once I figured out what all those symbols meant, then I could read, and I read everything, and I started writing. And but they were more stories. I don't remember when. I might have been in university when I wrote the first poem.
Did you like reading poetry?
I did. My parents bought the Books of Knowledge in the Encyclopedia series, and I read it cover to cover. And I loved the poems. I loved the old classics that were in the books. I loved the folk tales and mythology, geography. I just read and started writing, but I would have been about 11 when I started writing.
Did you have any influences or anyone who particularly inspired you?
I don't think so. My family wasn't a literary family, but my dad built a desk for me. It was a knee-hole desk. It had a drawer where I could keep pencils and papers and things, and it had 3 drawers down the side. So I'd write my stories, and I'd roll them up, probably on foolscap, because I remember the pages being long, and roll them up, and my mom sewed, and there were always ribbons, so I always kept the bits of the ribbons, would tie them with a ribbon, put them in the drawer. So I'd have a drawer full of all these scrolls. I don't ever remember undoing them and reading one of them.
Wow, it's such an amazing image.
Thank you.
What is it about writing poetry in particular that fulfills you? Because based on everything I read in all these books, you get a lot from what you write. Am I right?
I do.
Your books are full of feelings.
Yes, they are, and images. All of these things contribute to a poem. But why do I do it? I guess that was your question. Why poetry? Poetry answers questions that prose doesn't. If you're writing a narrative prose, I write narrative poetry, but if you're writing a narrative prose, you have an arc, at least traditionally, you have an arc, and you have room for side stories. In a poem, you have to be very focused on what it is. So you need to know what the question is in your mind. What are you searching for? What story do you want this poem to tell? At the end of the poem, even if it's a 14-line sonnet, at the end of the poem, you want a twist in there. So there's a bit of a surprise at the end. So it doesn't follow a particular linear chronology. You can have things, juxtapositions of opposites, which I think makes poetry very much more interesting to read. And certainly it's a challenge to write, but much more interesting to write, because when you start the poem, you don't know for sure where it's going to go. The subconscious is continually working. as well as the conscious, because you have the craft. You have all the style things you need to incorporate.
Do you get the idea and then start to write, or do you start just writing words? I mean, do you have to spend a long time thinking about what it is you're going to write?
No. No, I mean, a poem can take a very long time, but to start,
Yes.
It's an emotion, an image, or it could be a sound, probably any one of the senses, a relationship. But there's some question in there, something you don't quite understand. So the better poems, for me, are the ones that you really do not know. And the poem, as you're working it, takes you like a river, you know? Mm-hmm. It just takes you to a source.
And as you're saying that, so much of the imagery in your poetry is woven with water and nature and colors. Is there something spiritual in that for you?
Oh, well, it would be impossible to say no. So I don't start out that way, I don't thinking it. But I do think that we are creatures of the land. I think we're creatures made of stardust, but so is everything else. And so we're connected in that way. And I have lived in cities, but it is a whole other way of viewing and experiencing the world if you're living on concrete. Mm-hmm. You know, so I have lived rurally. I academically studied rural geography, rural policy. So my life is based. I guess I'm writing, quite simply, I'm writing out of experience.
And were you born in Essex County?
Yes.
And did you live near water?
I lived right kind of in the middle. I lived, my family were farmers on both sides, and they were from, I suppose, mostly around the Harrow area. My parents bought a farm when I was 18 months old between Pocket Corners and Oldcastle, which doesn't look anything like it looked before I moved away. Yeah. So it was in the country, but the water was very, very important. I mean, we're in a peninsula surrounded by Lake St. Clair, the Detroit River, Lake Erie, where there's water. There's always water.
Absolutely. I mean, this whole area was like a swamp at one point.
Yeah. Well, it was under, what was the Great Lake? Was it Iroquois?
Now, one thing, I read that you're the oldest of 7.
I am.
And, being myself, the eldest of 7, I thought, I wonder what what it was like for you.
Well, I was the eldest child on both sides of the family, the eldest grandchild on both sides of the family. So I had absolutely, for myself, I felt really loved. I was wanted. I was a wanted child. And I grew up thinking that my life was important and had value. And there was a certain confidence that came with it. And being the eldest of 7 children, I suppose the burden of that is that you were supposed to be a good example. And so there was tremendous pressure being the eldest of 7 children.
I couldn't agree more. Your book, your latest book, is The Blue Gate.
Yes.
What does it mean, the Blue Gate?
Well, blue is the color of distance you never arrive in. And that's a quote from Rebecca Solnit. And when I was writing this book, I was on a quest to figure out, how do you live when you're grieving? How do you live when you don't want to live alone? How do you do that? And you find yourself in that liminal space between everything you knew is gone. You're there in this doorway, and then there is the rest of it, that blue on the horizon. And, do you step into that unknown where you're never going to reach what you want, because what I wanted I could no longer have?
So this is personal.
So this is blue. That's the blue. The blue gate as a physical thing. There was a blue gate. When the home I was in, I visited in Nairobi, it was a gated community, and even within the gates we went through into the community, every home was gated, and there was a blue gate. So the blue gate comes up as an image. So it's a real thing, and it's a symbolic thing on a couple of different levels.
So tell us about this journey to the blue gate.
Well, starting at the beginning, do you have something in mind?
It's a very personal. It reads and feels like a very personal journey.
Yes, it was an actual journey. So in a sense, this is memoir, I suppose. I don't think of it that way, because I don't think of poetry as memoir, and yet poetry comes out of the individual, so it's pretty much all memoir in that sense.
Yes, in fact, it's really interesting, isn't it, to think of it that way as a memoir, because I don't think anyone ever describes it that way.
No, and I didn't think of it that way when I was writing it, but it is so personal. I was in a strange state when I went. A couple of weeks after my husband died, I was a mess. I went to visit a friend, and she took one look at me and said, "You need help." She asked me if I wanted to go to Kenya with her and her partner, and I said yes. It turned out that they couldn't go, and I went alone. So that's how the journey began. And I was sort of a child in the wilderness, I suppose. I hadn't, I didn't know the people. I had no idea about, any of it. And I flew, I got there, and Kyoko's wife, Esther, showed me my bedroom, and she closed the windows and the drapes, and she said, "Don't open the windows. Monkeys will come in." And you've been traveling a day and a night without real sleep, and it's the strangest thing. But what happened was, I suppose I was dreaming, but it was as if Jim came. And there is that surreal experience that happens throughout. There is a different, it wasn't like, it happens throughout the book, but it isn't like a dream. It's far more concrete. And what is interesting was being in an African context with Africans. They are open to that other reality, that what we see is only part of the real world. There are multiple levels of reality. And while I was there, I tapped into another level. And so there is that surreal component where on the same page, I may be describing a specific thing, but at the same time, I'm in a completely other place as well. So these two places are floating there the same time. Does that make any
It
sense
makes
at all?
absolute sense. What was that like? What did that feel like? You come from Canada and you're in this incredible situation. Did you say to yourself, how can this be? Or did you just go with it?
Yeah, I didn't question it at all. It seemed like what real was. It seemed like reality. That seeing things, from two sides now.
Yeah.
I think that's Judy Collins.
Yes.
But I that's how it felt, like I was seeing things from two sides. And it was as real. These things I knew couldn't be real. They couldn't be happening then. It seemed as real as, well, an elephant waking you up in the morning with its trumpeting. It was, you're dislocated.
How did the people you were with, the Africans, how did they experience you?
Well, that was interesting. They were absolutely warm and loving and considerate. But I was inevitably asked whether I was in Amboseli, the national park where the elephant herds were. I was there after 10 years of drought, and the elephant herds had been decimated. But it didn't wear. And a Maasai man, I was standing at the gate of the lodge that I was in, and they're all fenced, so the elephants and the lions and the rest of it don't get inside. Anyway, there was a man at the gate, and he was Maasai, and he said, "Why are you alone?" And he said, "If you were Maasai, you would not be alone." And I said, "Don't you have family?" Is what he said. And I said, "I do, but I needed to be alone. I needed time to figure out who I am as this person alone." My life changed completely. And he said, "If you were my grandma." And I got that over and over and over again. Like, there are beach boys on the beach near Mombasa, and of course they want money. As soon as you go off the property of the lodge you're staying at and on the beach, they're right there. And they were the most wonderful young men. They're probably from 14 to, 22, 23. And one young man, he just insisted on walking beside me. And I tried ignoring him, but it's impossible. You can't ignore. And finally I said, my husband died, and I just need to be alone. I just want to walk quietly in the surf. I want to walk from this end of the beach. I want to walk as far as I can that way. At some point I'll turn around and come back. But I really need to be alone. He said, "I'm going to tell my brothers, we won't bother you today. No promise about tomorrow."
No.
And they didn't. They were so respectful. I couldn't have loved Kenya more. It breaks my heart to see the news now and the state of the politics, economy, the floods,
Would you go back?
Oh, in a heartbeat.
Will you go back?
Probably not.
Yeah, I have the same feeling about South Africa. There was something so incredibly spiritual about it, and we always thought that at some point we might go back, and for 2 or 3 months at a time. But it's so dangerous and chaotic there. It's the same thing. Would I go back in a heartbeat? Will I go back? Probably not. So it's kind of sad, isn't it?
It is. It is. Well, age plays a role.
That too.
I'm older than I was.
Yeah.
And I was in a state of mind that I didn't care. I was fearless. Yes. I certainly didn't care. I was open to whatever was going to happen. Now, I would think a little differently about it.
Yes. So speaking of fearless, I want you to read something for me in a minute, but tell me about this being a sailor.
Oh, well,
were you a serious sailor?
that came after. After a few years after Jim died, well, I had always wanted to sail. He and I actually had talked about sailing because, we've got the lakes, the water right
Yes.
here. We were living in Amherstburg. We bought a house on Ramsay Street. And so we had talked about it. He had a friend who had a boat, and we thought we would do that, but he died too soon. We didn't do it. And by then our lives had taken on different interests. But after he died, I met a man who became a good friend. He's the man in Wayside. He became a good friend, and he was a sailor. And when he found out, we actually had met at a marina, and he found out, and we talked about sailing, and and we did. We spent 4 seasons, five or 6 months every year for, I think it was 4 years, might have been 5, off Cuba. Most of the time we were on the south shore of Cuba. I did eventually bring the boat back to Canada. That was an adventure in itself.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's not just an adventure. Wow. Were you by yourself, or did you have a crew?
No, at that point, I was alone. He was back in Canada, and I had the boat, and I had friends who sailed with me across the Gulf of Mexico, and then I had it put on a transport, and took the mast down and all of that, and it came up by land because it's a long story and too long to go into here, but we missed the opportunity to sail up the coast. And then we got into the season of weather that you can't do it.
Yeah.
And he flew home, and I brought the boat across to the U.S. and put it on a ship, or on a transport.
Well, your experiences and your fearlessness is certainly evident in how and what you write. And so, speaking of what you write, I've got a couple of poems I'd like you to read, but I'd like you to choose one that you like and why you like it.
The love poems are at the beginning, and they're love poems, and they're very sensuous on many levels. There was no fire in the wood stove, no glow inside the room, when he said softly on that midsummer afternoon, "I am dying." He was sitting in his favorite chair, an old oaken mission rocker bought somewhere at a country auction. He knew what I did not. Outside, goldfinches fluttered at the feeder, feet clasped to the metal grate, pecking at Niger seed, while mourning doves gathered below, and the sun fell toward the horizon at the end of the long lane.
It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
The other one I chose was You Lie.
You lie on the daybed, and I bring sheets and pillows for the sofa where I curl, and we talk through the night. You are very ill, and I pace at the edge of a precipice, hug myself against the shudders that shake your body. The way your skin suddenly stretches parched over your handsome bones, the strange color around your eyes. At the hospital we gather, the children, grandchildren, but soon the night comes when I cannot leave you, will not leave you. In the pre-dawn, when the sky leaks gray, a shallow last breath escapes your lips. I hold your hand, surprised how swiftly cold, how quickly you are gone.
Exquisite.
Thank you. Albinoni's Adagio. 10 years, soon 11. dawns and dusks merge, while all the sorcery I conjure fails to resurrect you. Hauser's cello fills the air with cavernous yearning. Still, I live. Hauser makes love to his cello, as you did to me, passionately, tenderly. Salt on our lips, honey whispers in the room. Albinone's adagio rises, falls, swells into fullness, slowly cascades into silence to haunt each blue breath. And still, I live.
They're absolutely gorgeous. There's so many beautiful lines in your work, and I know we're running out of time. I mean, we could talk for an hour. You have great lines, and you have to read her work, because love felled her like a tree. I mean, the imagery, can grief be a perpetual falling, and grief is my jailer. These are so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
As I said, I read, the first one or two, and I thought I have to read them all. The images that you've created from feelings is really absolutely fabulous. And speaking of time, we have to go. Where can people buy your work?
In Essex County, they're at the Independent Bookstore in Amherstburg, River Bookshop. Across the country, they're available in, chapters, I suppose. I push independent bookstores.
Yes. Thank you so much. It's just been such a pleasure, Kathryn.
Oh, thank you.
And that's all the time we have, unfortunately, on the show today. Many thanks to our charming guest, Kathryn MacDonald. And please try to go somewhere, find her work in these independent bookstores. You'll love it. Thanks to our Scribes and Songsters team, producer Brian Sweet and technical producer and editor Gary Glass. Grateful thanks to Tony Toldo and the Toldo Foundation, and to Neil and Tina Quering for their support. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you soon, right back here on Scribes and Songsters. I'm Veronique Mandel. Bye for now.